Woo! Good morning. Happy Friday, beautiful people. The wheels do indeed keep turning. If it's around 9 o'clock, you know it's time for Lovebabz Love Talk. And I'm talking. This is talking this morning. I think I've really talked all week. I spun a lot of records this week. So Enroue is back in the studio today.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hey there.
So, we take this time where we reconnect back to our roots, our roots of the continent, and how to sort of, I don't know, think about it in our everyday practical lives.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm good.
Are you opening with a prayer or a song?
Yes. Well,
I look forward to that.
You prompted in our quick reflection of a rather mild winter.
Yes.
And so we had a quick exchange around the mildness of the winter and this, moving into February, and this is right. Right. So I remember back in the day when winters were so and so forth. Right. But there's
3 years long.
There's some real things around how things are changing, how the climate is changing, and I know many people have some different ideas about what pushes that. I tend to hold this fact that in these days human beings are an active part of that, and so the more that we can do to rectify that, the longer this environment that we're in, our home, we can work with it to make it a place that is sustainable for us. And so there's a prayer. So Orisha tradition, and as we connect with our roots, as you were saying, Babz, the Orisha tradition is fundamentally an honoring and a reverence and a worship of nature, and that nature is divine, not just kind of a manifestation of that, but is unto itself. And so there's actually there's an Orisha, which is actually the earth itself. The earth is an Orisha itself, and there's a prayer that comes out of the sacred literature of Ifa that speaks to that. And so the verse is Osa, comes out of Osa Meiji. Osa, the brightly shining one, Ifa, priest of the earth, performed Ifa divination for the earth. And the earth was warned to stop making sacrifices and offerings to become wealthy, and instead to make these offerings to protect her from her enemies. And that we are certainly alive, and we are praying that as long as we remain on the earth, that the earth is never destroyed. Ashe. And so even right now, I'm just going to do a little bit. So for those of you on the listening on the radio, I just made a small offering, and a simple offering, a tiny libation to the earth itself as a prayer. That certainly as we remain alive, that the earth is never destroyed. And offerings are actually one of the ways, right? Sacrifice is actually one of the ways that we can work with the earth and with the divine and with our ancestors, so that our lives and the circumstances of our lives are sustainable and nurturing and nourishing for us to thrive and to live. Because if we can't live long, right, if our lives are literally cut short, then how can we rejoice in what life has? How can we really fulfill our purpose? Right? So some of the even basic prayers are to live long and to live a healthy life. And in that way we can be connected to our purpose. We can manifest that. We can have the relationships that matter, because being alive really matters.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Right? And we have opportunities to be alive now that our ancestors don't have. Right? Our ancestors used to be people, and they're not alive human beings anymore. Right? And so this is, how can we honor the opportunities we have, right? Whether that's for healing, whether that's for connection, whatever it is. And so it's a call to action in that way. I was thinking even separate from this around talking today about the role of these offerings, right? And the role of sacrifice and making sacrifices and actually the simplicity of it. Because I think I could imagine very often either how I talk about it or how other people talk about it, there's, even as we talk about prayer, there can be a lot of pressure to kind of get it right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to have this relationship with my notion of God or the divine and the sacred, and I'm going to go and I'm going to pray and I got to connect with these things and I do all this stuff and I have this deep and I have to listen deeply and get it right. And in this tradition, there's actually as much emphasis on the doing. And what I mean by that is actually the making of the offering. So,
yeah.
And even less or maybe equally as significant on the prayers themselves.
Okay.
And so, or the process of praying. And so
that speaks to intention, because you might not know all the right words to say, but if you make the effort to do something or to do,
yes.
I mean, is that close to?
Well, it's even less about intention. So when we make offerings, we touch them to our head.
Okay.
And that literally connects what we're doing to our own ori, right? Our own divinity, our own connection to our own destiny.
Okay.
So even if we don't, it's less about intention, because even if we don't kind of get it, I'm praying for wholeness in an abstract way. And really what I need to be praying for, the specifics of, I really need this other job.
Okay.
Right? And so it's less about coming with the intention, how about this intention around wholeness, but it's actually like sometimes it's actually about bypassing that altogether. Just like we touch the item to our head and we make the offering, and the offering can be simple. And then if we have the means, we then ask. There are ways of asking if it's accepted. And so the process of making an offering can be kind of fast and not elaborate. So it could be, for example, people often go to the gravesite of a family member and they bring flowers. And so actually those are offerings, right? Because we're leaving them there.
Well, everybody did.
We're giving them.
All the Christian people just fell over.
Right? So that's okay. Rest. While you're falling over, just take a rest and breathe and feel that the earth is supporting you even as you've fallen down. It's okay. That. And so that's an offering. And so sometimes, right, you may bring these flowers and you set them down and you're just doing it, right? This is just what I do. I come and I do this and I have maybe a little moment, but I'm not particularly attending to anything. And then I go. And other times it might be, I bring the flowers and there's a deep listening and I'm saying things and this is what's happening and I miss you, or this was happening with the family, and there might be tears and all the connections and all the things. And it's still the offering, and in its simplistic way, it can also just be I'm bringing the thing and I'm laying it down and I'm saying thank you and I go. And that has power, and that is activating the relationship, because it's not, when we're making offerings, we are bringing ourselves to it, but we're also connecting to this other force, to these other beings, however we want to envision them. In the Orisha practice and tradition, it's our ancestors or the Orisha, right? So it's the divine, or it's our ancestors. That's kind of who we're making these offerings to. And so we're saying please help, and here's the thing. And then it's out of our hands, and there's actually nothing necessarily more we have to do in its most simplistic way. It can literally be, I'm doing this here, thank you, and I gotta go. And then it's on them to do the things to help us. And so I say that because sometimes we can get caught up in okay, I'm bringing the thing and I have to enunciate everything that it is and be super specific and give them the guidance so that they know what to do and where to do it.
Do people so we're not even supposed to get caught up in the offering itself. Do you know what I mean? Like you ever hear people say, I don't have any clothes to wear to church, or I don't have anything nice to wear to church, or So it's the same mindset of I don't have anything to offer to the offering. Like I don't have anything to bring to the offering.
Right, which we actually always do.
Mm-hmm.
And so even the offering itself, the item itself doesn't have to be elaborate. So even so there can be, just like with many religious and spiritual traditions, an overemphasis on the container, what we look like. Like I got, right, you're saying like, oh, I don't have the clothes, I don't have the thing. Everyone is given this, or here's the tithing that they're doing. Everyone's putting all this in and I have nothing, right? Or in the Orisha tradition, it's these elaborate things that are then, well, if you want to be connected to Oshun, you have to bring, 5 of these and 10 of these and 30 of these and the most expensive something. And fundamentally, since it's about this relationship, it might be some water. It might be a flower. It might be an orange, a piece of fruit. It might be, I have none of those things, and all I have is the time and the focus that I'm bringing. That is also an offering. And so,
good point.
There's always an and the more that we get caught up in either this is what the process is supposed to look like, or I don't have it figured out, so how can I ask for help because I don't even know what I need? And it's like, well, you can just pray for knowing what you need, for some insight. Like, I don't know what I need, help me. And that's enough. And if you literally, all you have in that moment is your prayer and the offering of your sincerity, great. If you have a thing and that's kind of part of your tradition, then you can do that, right? If you've already, I'm going to the cemetery and I'm bringing some flowers, well, like that's the offering. And just to what I realized is, so I did some work with the organization recently, and half of the work was about I partnered with Hanifa Washington of One Village Healing, and part of the work was about kind of organizational training around burnout and stress, and then the other part, and this is this kind of simplistic piece, was about wellness and really encouraging some wellness practices. And in that, one thing I did was give opportunities for people to connect with their ancestors. And we did it in a really simple way. And we had some water and then our flowers. And there are certainly ways that making offerings and ceremony can be very elaborate and very kind of hands-on, or in the work, and what's the thing, we're going to get into it, and where's the healing, or where's the yearning that you have. And it can also be really simple, like, here's a flower, and like, what do you want to say to your people? What support do you need? And like, say that and give that, and that's it. And it's really powerful how deep and profound that is, the kind of simplicity of that is. And even with that, right, there's present with people and helping them to connect. It can also be, I don't know, and I'm touching the flower to my head and to my heart, and I give it, and I go. And that's also valuable and important and has an impact in getting support in these relationships. Getting the support doesn't always mean I have to kind of explicitly lay everything out, because we're touching it. We touch it to our head, right? It's the seat of our destiny and our purpose. We touch to our heart, this place of our spirit and our kind of life force, and kind of even surrender that. So like, there's just as much validity in that simple of a practice where I'm just making an offering and then I'm kind of going on to the next thing. Because the engagement, the activity of the support is coming elsewhere. It's coming from elsewhere. And so the offering is the kind of activating that. It's like you ask somebody, oh, can you show up and give me a ride? Yeah, sure, great. I don't actually have to get in a whole conversation of, well, I really need the ride because this happened and that happened, and I really want you to understand how sincere I am and how much I really need, and da-da-da. And it might just be like, hey, can you give me a ride? Yes, I can give you a ride. And that's it. It could be in the same way. Here's the flower. Here's my ancestors. Here's this offering. I love you. And I go.
Okay.
Right?
Wow. That's like the lowest common denominator.
Yes.
Which I don't think people get to, right? I don't think people get to. I think we get caught somewhere between the things and the having the things and the perception of being seen having the things.
Well, this is part of in this system, the understanding of like the offering itself actually has power. It's not simply, and actually my teacher once said, like, who's to say that all these forces even speak our language? Like either speak the literal language or like speak human. Right? Who's to know in terms of like what we're offering? I mean, like, our ancestors, yes, but like we talk about like the ocean. Does the ocean speak human? Right? And so the offering itself is the language, right? You lay some food out, people understand whether they actually speak your language or not. Animals will come, they understand, like, oh, this is nurturing, this is food, right? We get that. And so there's something in that exchange of these offerings which has power, and that is important to recognize, because it's a giving of something, right? This is something I have, and I'm actually surrendering it to feed this relationship, to lead towards this other thing, which is important to me, which I need help with, and that's kind of a fundamental shift. We're not raised in this culture to do that. I mean, we pay for things, right? But then it's like, I deserve and I own, and you can't, to want a loving relationship that's really in your heart, you actually can't pay for that.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't own that.
Pay, but you can make offerings to that. You can offer your time, and I'm connecting to you as a person, and I'm being honest with you, and here's my vulnerability. Like, that's the building of a relationship. And so fundamentally, it's remembering that all of this work is about this relationship. So how do we heal the relationship and partner with a relationship with our ancestors?
See, I love that. You know why I love it? Because
why do you love it, Babz?
I love it because that's how I am set my life up these days. That all love is love. Like, I don't differentiate the kinds of love I have for my friends, for my children, for things. It's all the same for me. Like, it's all the foundation is the same. Just what you said, giving up the time, the showing up, that all of that, vulnerable. Like, it requires all the same energy, the same.
What comes from this? Like, it's from the same place.
Yes.
Right?
Like, I'm not saving up more love for a lover. And I'm not.
But it looks different.
It looks different.
It looks different.
In its
like, the person who's your lover experiences that kind of love from you, which the children aren't experiencing that kind of love from you in the same way, right?
I don't know. They might be. I'm not talking about the physicalness of things.
But that's a part of it.
I'm talking about my open heart, my open spirit.
Yes.
They get my truth. They get my vulnerability. They get my time. It's the same. I don't have more or less time for my children.
Yeah. Do
you know what I mean?
No, it's like, love is not like the pie that, like, well, I gave this percentage here, so now I have less there, and
I'm gonna save more over here because
right.
No, right. I think about this all the time, and how I approach dealing with people, or living with people, or being with people. To be equitable with myself. But not say equitable, right? Like, not sort of like, oh, I'm gonna make sure you get a 10th and you get a 10th and you get it. That's
yeah. I think there's, or I just said but, so like an and. I think there's also because the relationships themselves are different. So, like, there's love, right? I'm in it. I'm being present.
Yes,
but I'm actually being present
in
the context of what this relationship is, right? And so, relationship one, it's still me being full, but it's being full in that relationship, in the context of what that is, and the circumstances of that. And so I may be giving something different in that. And here's this other relationship, and I'm fully in it, but that fully in that particular relationship might be I'm giving something different in that. And I just think it's a really interesting just quality and experience of, like, so here's this love, right? Here's the me, and I'm being full and, whatever, if you want to use authentic or, real or present or whatever. And that actually looks and is experienced and is expressed differently under different circumstances with different people. And I just think that's a really powerful thing. And there are ways that in the Orisha tradition, if we call it a polytheistic system, which sort of is correct, but sort of isn't correct, there are different forces we are in relationship with in different ways, kind of for different things. My relationship, like, the energy and the feel of connecting with the ocean is gonna be different than a river or than a storm. Even though it's all relationship, it's all this experience, it's all me being full and this force being full, but the activity and experience with is different. Similarly with my ancestors, similarly with the kind of alive people who I love and am in relationship with. Like it touches something different, which I just think is a powerful, fascinating thing about being a human being. Like there is no like, oh, this is it. This is like all the things.
Although people want you to believe that.
People want you to believe that this is the one way, this is the one thing.
Yeah.
And it's what it is. I don't, that's not my experience.
Not mine either. So, I mean, I think when I didn't know anything, it was, but now I know something else. And so, I know that there's many, many experiences to the way. Yeah. So, and I like to believe that my thinking these days is however I show up for God is how I show up in my relationships. That's my task. However I show up for God, that's how I want to show up for my circle and the world, really. But sometimes it gets a little dicey. But as long as I start there, I have a good reference point for how to be.
I find that for me,
I'm not successful all the time either.
No, but I find for me that there's a piece around, like for both of those things requires actually more openness and more listening and more being allowing what am I receiving to be a part of it versus the here's the I'm kind of putting out and what I'm putting out. That's certainly powerful. Like this is how I want to be with this person or this force and God and the divine. This is like the offering in a certain way. And there's also really being open to like, well, how do these things show up, and how can I receive them? Because if I'm not open to that, I'll miss it. Because it's not all just about like kind of what I'm putting in the world. It's like because it's a relationship. So the relationship is how am I putting myself and activating myself that direction, and there's the receiving, and that's the relationship. Is this force in my heart like relevant in a really intimate, personal way? Can I allow it there? Can I allow this person in there? Right, that's the receiving part of it. Not just, I used to think even in my my younger days and going out with people, this like, can I meet their need? And I really thought that was the standard. Yeah. Like, oh, well, they're complex. Oh, well, can I meet that need? Great, this works. And then after some time with that person, I was like, oh, there's something else actually that's needed. And the other part was my need, was the uniqueness and the particularities of me. And I didn't really know what that was. And I literally said, I need to stop dating for a while and figure that out. Like, I don't even know where that is. Like, someone's like, well, what? Like, I asked, what do I even need? And I was like, I don't even know where to begin with that. And so I was like, let me actually take some time, not being confused by people. That's
some real talk coming from a man saying that, because men are always tasked with just knowing.
Yeah.
Like you just know.
and being raised as a feminist was, this other importance of really tapping. Well, what does this person, what does this woman really need, and can I meet that? As opposed to putting my thing on her or my thing on them, like making all these sacrifices, and is this what I need? And if we link this back to even making offerings, if it's not connected to our head and our destiny, if it's not connected to the deeper yearnings that we have, it ain't gonna bring us there.
Wow.
And so
that's pretty powerful.
That kind of, I thought I was doing the right thing by I'm meeting their needs and not even realizing that, I had them, and that was actually important. And if I didn't bring actually my needs to the table, something else is getting created. Something's getting created either way. And so let me start to explore what happens if I bring my yearnings and connect it to, as whole a part of myself as it could be, right? That changed over time, what my yearnings were when I was,
20,
28. I didn't even start thinking about that till like my mid-20s. Like, what do I really need? It's really different than now.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a different kind of connectivity and there's an ease that I have now around like, oh, this is a tender place, or this is a relevant place. It doesn't have to always feel like it's tender, but like this is really relevant to who I am and how I want to be. And so if I can at least hold that, even if the other person doesn't know or the situation doesn't know, if I hold that, then I can orient like, oh, is this the place for me? Only maybe like 50%. Okay. If I can recognize that, I'm not looking for it to be 80%, and I'm not just like overjoyed because it's not 30%. It's like, oh, it's what it is. And maybe I can actually be with the reality of that versus like, it's awful, it's terrible, it's wonderful. And like, it's actually just like, it's all right. Maybe it can just be all right.
Wow.
But if I don't know where I'm at, I won't actually be able to know.
And see, that's critical. That level of awareness is the critical piece, I think. Don't you think? It's
been helpful. It means that, I think it's critical in terms of your like life being connected to you.
Because then I think that solves a whole lot of issues that come up for people. That level of awareness of your own needs, your own yearnings, and not substituting it for somebody else's wishes, hopes, desires. You're not a genie in a bottle.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? To somebody, you have to really show up with your own.
Yeah. And then the flip side of that is not just what do those needs even mean? Not just like I want. Just like, because the flip side of that in terms of like patriarchy and like male supremacy is all about like men's needs, right? It's like, this is what I want, and this is what it's about, and so I just want to get it. And so how there's kind of real talk around like, what am I getting at?
Yeah.
What do I think that I want? Is it really the thing, or is this what I've been sold as like, if I have this kind of power, I have this kind of status, or I have this someone who's just fawning all over me, is that really it? Does that really get it yearning? Does that get it like my sense of being and purpose? And because those are my questions, like purpose and meaning, and why am I here? What am I doing? And if I'm going to be here, why mess around? And that's not always the kind of first question on people's minds, but that helped me to get beneath, to merge that place of like, what do I really need? And can I also be open to this other person's need and see if it meets? And if it does, that's beautiful. It's a wondrous thing. And if it doesn't, I can be clear about it and say like, all right, well, now what do I want to do? Is it a good enough, or is it like, no, thanks, I'm going to keep moving.
Yeah.
Right. And those are not easy questions. Our society is not built on supporting those questions.
This is how people stay in trouble. Right. Because they don't get to the truth of things for themselves. Not somebody, not the person in front of you truth.
Right.
Your truth when you show up to somebody, and the somebody could be anything, right? The truth that, do you hate this job? No, it's all right. No, but you really do hate this job. Yeah. But you, before you can say you hate the job, what you do is, I have all these things I need to do. That's why I have to keep this job.
And they're real things. When we talk about like a job, right? There's real things.
Listen,
and
they
at
are
least,
real things.
Can we, if we recognize the place that it plays, this job is actually so I can pay bills. Great. I don't actually need to bring the desire to have my like whole authentic self in the ways that I want it somewhere else to show up there, because I actually can't show up there. Right? It's constructed in a certain way to be dehumanizing to one degree or another. And so, all right, I'm going to make sure I know I'm a human, but I'm not going to try to, in this place, necessarily say like, it has to fulfill me in that way, because that'll just cause pain.
Yeah, because it's not going to
Because it's not going to do it. It's going to do the opposite. So let me like gear up and fortify myself that no, I'm not going to let it in that close. This, I show up, I do my thing, I'm responsible, fine, X, Y, Z, great. And then when I leave, that's the place in the rest of my life where I'm like, this is where I need to get filled up. This is where the connectivity comes.
Yeah.
This is where the life having meaning while there is suffering can happen. And that's really vital. Like, we need that. If we don't, right, then we got these places of despair and hopelessness, and then we behave in ways to numb that out and to manage it that actually keeps us separate from even, what's possible in life with a capital L.
That's true. That I've been noticing and discovering that over the years about that. Like, I'm very clear about what work is. Some of us are lucky that we do the kind of work that is all the things that we imagine and want work to be. But the majority of us are not that lucky. That it is about, listen, I got to keep the roof over the head and the lights on.
Yeah.
And so I go to this job not because this is my heart's desire, but because it's a paycheck.
Right.
And I can do this work. And when I leave out of here at the end of the day, then I go chase my dream or whatever.
Or at least connect in big ways and in small ways. And some of that even to touch back to these, like the simplicity of offerings. It may not then mean that, like, because for most people, right, once that job is left, doesn't mean that the rest of their life is just open and wonderful and glorious. You know, there's obligation, there's things that can feel the same. And so even in that, right, the reason we make these offerings and develop these relationships with these like unseen forces is for some help and support. So it doesn't again mean like, okay, now I have to take an hour to like have this elaborate self-care thing. And sometimes it can literally just be, I'm moving from point A to point B, and on the way, here's this, here's a piece of fruit, here's a coin, here's a something, and I make the offering and I put it by the crossroads, or I set it down in the place that I honor my ancestors, or like however it works, and like you do that and like just help me to have the support that I need, sometimes just to get through the day, and like that's sufficient. Because we actually can't do it all by ourselves. Even the like self-care wellness thing, we actually can't just say, all right, I'm just going to magically have this spa day, right? Or whatever the kind of self-care is. Or I'm going to have this like retreat that I'm going to go on, or I'm going to connect with all the people in the joyous ways that I want to. Sometimes like we literally don't have the time and capacity for that. And so what I want to also let people know is that part of the ways that we work with these forces can be so simple as like, let me just make this offering and just like, I don't even know what I need. Things are not going well. And I just need some help and make the offering. And like that activates things. And it doesn't have to be now I have to feel the resolution. I have to feel the peace and the calm that just washes over me. No, because sometimes it doesn't happen, and that's okay. There's power and there's significance in the offering itself. And so I want to, there's a way that a lot of these things around like self-care and wellness and health and all these things can feel like, here's this whole other task. Here's this whole other way that I have to live my life. And I can't do that, right? I don't have the time to, leave here and do this. There's something that's, okay, well, can it literally be a minute? Or can it even be like in the midst of things, it can seem seamless. Like, here's the thing, and it's over there, and like I touched in my head, and like, please help me. I don't even know what I'm doing. I just need to get through this day better. Boom. And you're done. And like that has an impact.
I agree. I mean, that's how I feel about prayer. Do you know what I mean? Like I have a prayer practice where I've trained myself to sit longer and longer in prayer,
right.
And not have it feel like a chore. Because, people are like, oh, my brain is racing, and they can't meditate. They can't do all these things.
Yep.
It's like a muscle. You have to just start small and keep training yourself and be deliberate about it. I mean, it takes time to learn to sit and be still, and calm your brain and your mind. It takes time.
But it might also be okay to, I think there's such an emphasis on the goal of some of those practices is to have a calm mind. Right. And my thoughts don't race. And
no, you know what? It's okay if they race.
They're gonna. That's what our brains do. They think from one thing to another.
But that doesn't stop you from like the prayer. Like just because your brain is racing doesn't mean you don't get to. You can pray with a racing brain.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. It's be with how you actually are.
Yes.
And there are these notions of prayer, there are these notions, right, of offerings that, in order to do it right, I actually have to leave all that behind and enter in this whole other luminous space where everything is just like, yes, and I have this wonderful perspective, and it's, that's wonderful. It's great.
I just think it's the doing of things.
Right.
It is the repetitiveness of doing something. Till you get, it's like anything. It's like cooking. The more you cook, the better you get at it.
Hopefully.
Well, you might be right.
The better.
I know people who have been at it a long time and still are awful.
But with this, there's as much around the beingness of it And even if you can be present with your racing mind, that's better. That's already success. Than being lost in the racing mind.
Yes.
Right. So if the sitting is like, I'm trying to pray, I can't even connect with what I need because my mind is racing and my heart's racing and I'm overwhelmed. Okay. Look what you just noticed. You noticed you were overwhelmed.
Yes, you're overwhelmed.
Versus being flooded with it and you couldn't even get to that place.
And then heaping some guilt on top of that.
Right.
Oh, look what I can't do.
This is how bad I am. I'm not even worth doing this.
And I was like, look, I suck. I can't even quiet my own mind. Yeah, no. Yeah. That's not what we're suggesting.
Well, our mind isn't, I mean, there's all kinds of things how we can approach that, but it's like saying like, my heart's just beating fast. I want it to stop beating. Well, no. There are things we can do, right, to encourage a shift there, right, and there are practices to do. But if it's beating fast, like, okay, well,
that might be a conversation for the doctor.
Well, there's all kinds of things to be curious about. One is just to notice it, and there may be something that you can track it. Like, is this every day, all the time, or is it like, wow, I'm really just scared, and that's what's under it. Or it might not even be what the story is. It might be like, okay, it's beating really fast. Let me just sit with that. And just be with it. And there's benefit to that. I mean, this is like life is complex and it might actually not be as complicated as we think it is. Like our brains do that. Our brains like, it's really, and you got to do this and understand this. And these are all the things like, wow, my brain loves to do that. And it might, link it back to these offerings. It might be, here's the thing, touch to my head, give it, and go. And like that is also fine. And like that actually might have both enable us to engage in the relationship, right? If I'm so worried about even if with a person, if I'm so worried about the relationship and I have so much of a story in my mind about what this relationship takes, that might get in the way of just doing a simple thing about being in the relationship.
I love that.
I certainly do that. I got all kinds of stories in my head, like, oh, I gotta resolve this and have this kind of conversation. And like, oh, what if I just like don't just say, hey, how you doing? Fine, great. Oh, I got 5 minutes. Great. Okay, cool. And they're done. And that might be okay.
Yeah.
It certainly might be better than all the worrying, the things and the thoughts, and all that it does.
The whirling dervish kind of thing. Woo!
My goodness, I do that. And it's a thing. Like even I've spent a lot of time in these practices. And I'm a human being and I still need help. And these are also practices that are a place I can go for help. Not necessarily a practice where like, oh, this is where I figure it out, but this is where I just go for help. And it's like, all right, I still don't know. And it's like, it's a funny thing where it's like, well, the more you know, the more you don't know. It's like, yeah, that's cute and that's nice. But like, there's a part which is like, yeah, and I don't like that. Like, I want to know. And I have to understand like where that comes from. And I can be with that. Even as like in other moments, I can really feel like, wow, really not knowing, really being with this mystery of life thing is a really wonderful, beautiful thing. Yeah. Right. And there's so much in that. And there's another part which is like, yeah, that's nice. And like how I want this to do this thing. I want to know. It's funny.
I like the duality of that though.
It's a funny thing.
I like that you can be both things at the same time. Right. It's like, all right, I'm with the mystery of life. Yeah. But I also I want to know.
Right. And life, it's different than what we think. It's all different than what we think because our thinking will tell us we know. Like our thoughts will be like, I understand this. I understand this person. I understand me. I understand what I'm doing. And like, that's actually just our thought. And like, there's a reality and an existence which is completely separate from those thoughts. Like we don't know everything. We've got very limited information about how we're experiencing reality, but we pay attention to what we don't. Yet our mind is like, I got it. I know what to do. I know how to relate to this person. I know how to be. And like, that's why life keeps surprising us.
It does. It does. That's the beauty of it, right?
Yes.
That is the beauty.
Yes.
That's a good way to think about this as we move toward my favorite holiday, Valentine's Day.
Yes. Yeah.
Where everybody
love is good.
Where everybody gets all two thoughts. They hate it or they love it. I hate the commercialism of it. Well, it doesn't have to be your experience.
Well, there are also people where there's such the pressure of like, well, then if I'm not in this loving relationship with another person, then I'm left out of this conversation. Then I'm left out of love, and including like your love of yourself. Like if even if there was this real aspect of it that was like, wow, how could we really love ourselves with all the stuff that we got, right? That would be transformative, and like, wow. And then if we move into a relationship from that place,
whoa,
right? That's good. That's a good thing. Versus it's got to be this image of having that relationship with another, and then you got it. Oh yeah, then it's Valentine's Day. It's all the niceties, and the yumminess, and like it can also be that with ourselves and with our love of our life.
Exactly. That's how I feel. The love of my life.
Yeah.
I am the love of my life.
Yes.
And it took me a minute to get here, but I am here now. Right? Somebody said it to me the other day. It was like, oh, I love this relationship that you're in. You deserve to be happy. I was like, yeah, I am the one that I've been waiting for.
Right. Right.
Everything else is really a nicety.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, icing.
Yeah. And if you don't start listening to what you need.
Yeah.
Right. Then you're not how are you demonstrating that love for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not fixed. It changes. It morphs day to day, moment to moment. But like, let that be a part of the information. Yeah. Of like, wow, what I need. And there are also others, right? But if it was such a habit of like, well, what do they need? And I can like tune into that really easily. Like, oh, yeah, okay. I can kind of, I know the area to kind of interact with them to start to meet a need that they have. And was realizing that like I was leaving myself out. What do I need in this? Oh, maybe I need to like go get a glass of water instead. Oh, what if I do that? Oh, but then the story in my head is like, well, then like their needs not being met. It's like, well, let me start with mine, and then if that's still there, maybe I can come to them differently, right? Versus like, oh, I have to meet your needs somehow, my needs get put aside. Like that's a weird. Is that the relationship I really want?
I think that's such a good point, Enroue. That's such a good, because I think people unwittingly do that. I don't think people see themselves doing it.
I don't think some people do, and some people there's a lot that goes into a belief that is the way to be. That it's be like I've said this before. So being the sacrifice, like I'm gonna literally give of myself until there's nothing left.
Yeah.
To all these other things, and that is the goal. And I invite people to like, well, what would it mean to meet both your needs and theirs, and that you can make sacrifices. Like I can choose to like, I'm going to do this, but how do I do that and live instead of give, and which ends up leaving me to either like literally die or to like be so disconnected really from what I need that there's a different kind of lack of meaning and death that we can talk about.
I saw a meme up on Instagram or Facebook or one of the social media sites that says, you do not have to set yourself on fire to warm others.
Right.
And I was like, whoa.
Yes. I shade to that.
I was like, holy cow.
Yes.
I was like, yeah.
And there's a lot that goes into this. I mean, I don't know how that's internalized by so many people in so many ways. And I think that, I'd invite people who are in their Christianity or in their, even like how we've been raised in this culture, because there's a lot of that which is wrapped up in that of like being the sacrifice. Like I have to be, right? So Jesus was as the ultimate sacrifice, right? Let go, made it so that he was a sacrifice. You didn't have to make sacrifices anymore, at the temple. And ways that's been internalized, like, oh, I have to be the sacrifice like that, versus, right, I have to literally set myself on fire. I have to be crucified. Then I'm good. That's actually my purpose. And there are other ways and other systems and other peoples who've lived lives connected to the divine, connected to the purpose, who don't see things that way.
Yeah.
And that's actually part of, if we look at like what is our heritage as African heritage people and indigenous people, that's actually where that lives there. We can make sacrifices for our community, right? people who engage in Sundance ceremonies, right, where their flesh is pierced or sliced. There's this literal like a sacrifice of the flesh, but they're not killing themselves. This is they're making this sacrifice for their people, and it is still about their own unique purpose and individuality as a part of to then create a culture which is built up of people who are alive and awake and connected to their purpose. Right, that becomes the purpose, right? So I'm still gonna give of myself, but it's not a killing of myself. And I just think there's some subtleties in there and some places to be curious about. Because then what are we literally serving if that's how we're living, right? If I'm literally setting myself on fire, or in my life that I'm grinding things away so much beyond my capacity, that's leading to my stress and strains on relationships and poor health. What am I serving? Who's benefiting really from that? And don't I get to be part of freedom? Don't I get to be part of health and liberation? Don't I get to be part of this community, the sacred community, this beloved community that I'm trying to create? What would it mean to engage in that way and get support to do that? And I think that there are ways, and I just invite people to like keep exploring what that really is, so that we can actually be alive and connected to our life and purpose, not be destroyed by the forces trying to undo our lives.
And with that, we come to an end.
Ashe.
I appreciate that. Yes. This is good. Thank you so much, Enroue. Thank you, Harry. I'm going to sign out.
And if I'm not on before then, happy Valentine's Day. A lot of love to everybody.
Yes.
Be well.
Sounds like a good idea. All right. Harry, I'm going out, Harry.
Said, no, not yet. Don't leave.
See Harry in there.
Don't leave.
Harry in there.
We need you, Babz. We need your love.
I'm out, baby.